Welcome to the live Smart Town Hall Forum. I'm Scott Tribitz, and I've worked in the labor movement for about 30 years helping unions in organizing and communications, and I have a long history with SMART. And I got to tell you, I'm really excited to be with all of you today to take part in the Ask Me Anything with your General President, Joe Sellers. Before we get started with the discussion, I want to make sure everyone knows how they can ask questions, and really there's two ways to do it. First, if you're watching on your computer, under this screen, you will see a box where you can send a question. It'll come right into our studio, and we'll be able to answer it for you. The second option is for people at watch parties or union meetings. You can send an email directly to ppimentel@smart-union.org. That's ppimentel@smart-union.org. Well, let's get right to it. General President, thanks for inviting me here. And we have a first question up. I know you've been spending a lot of time traveling the country, talking to members, going to visit locals. What have you been hearing, and what kind of concerns have you seen?
So as I travel around the country, both the United States and Canada, I try to spend a little extra time there, and I've been talking to members and talking to contractors and talking to people in general on the construction sites and in the rail yards. So I continue to find out and make sure that our members know that this is their union and that our union is stronger with 200,000 members, sheet metal and transportation members coming together. We are stronger together. We are stronger when we speak with one voice. We are stronger when we pull on the rope together, and we can accomplish a lot more together as a strong labor movement, as a strong SMART union. Their voice matters. Their opinions matter. And when I go around, I want to hear what they have to say. I want to listen. We need to listen, and we need to learn. No matter what level of our organization, we need to continue to learn of the values and the things that are important to our members and the values of how we capture more work and jobs for our members. And how does that have a growth pattern for this union? The value and the added value that we as leaders in the organization bring to our membership, because our membership brings that value to this industry day in and day out across all sectors of our industry. Some of the things that we've done just recently because of the hurricane, and some of the things that have been happening in the Houston, Texas, Louisiana, and then unfortunately right after that was the Florida and then Puerto Rico, and all the disasters that have been going on. I've had an opportunity to be down there and to meet with members and pick up the phone and call them, and the appreciation that they had to know that their union cared, that somebody picked up the phone and called them to make sure that they were okay. And if they weren't okay, we dispatched somebody out there to find out what they could do, what could we do. And locals from all across this country, transportation and sheet metal and members were impacted by that, and the ability to be able to bring supplies into an area that's been totally devastated by these hurricanes, and the support that this membership and the locals from both countries have given to those brothers that are affected right now. Monetary checks put to both transportation and sheet metal members that are affected by that. And right now we're in the wildfires of California and the northwest section. We were in Vancouver in August with all those wildfires. So today and right now it's Houston. It may be Beaumont. If you remember Beaumont, the water didn't crest in Beaumont until 12 days later. So you have all that devastation. And I am so happy and proud of the reaction that we've been able to do as a union, as a SMART union, as 200,000 members. And that's the action that I really like to make sure that we do and continue to do and speak with one voice. The other thing that we try to do is make sure we stay connected. You're sitting in D.C., it's hard to be connected. You got to stay connected to the things that are impacting the workplace day in and day out. And how can we better get around and see that, whether it's in the shop or on the job or in the rail yard or in the locker room? How do we do that better? And how do we keep up with the technological advancements? We can see them and we can feel them and touch them, but what is the practical application of that on the job or in the workplace, wherever that may be? So that's been the dialogue. That's been what's on their mind, what's their concern. How do we incorporate that down the road, and how do we bring and continue to add value as an organization, leadership, rank and file, making sure that we're producing and adding value to the industry so that we have better job opportunities and get back to the job growth of this union.
So when you were out there and you were talking about some of the hurricane relief you were doing, do you think a lot of your members think of the union as just the collective bargaining agent, and all of a sudden you surprise them by getting truckloads of resources out there and doing other stuff? I mean, it probably makes a difference to them.
Yeah, I think they do. I think they do. So the typical thing that they see from their local union, going to local union meetings, seeing their business representative, or their local chairman or their general chairman in some cases, or the legislative office, right? But here we are in a different way, reaching out to members in a different way, in a different fashion. And this is really the support from both countries, right? I may be the vehicle. I certainly don't hand off the check. That's for the local union to give to their membership in support. And the emotion that we go through, it's hard to keep a dry eye, quite frankly, when that business representative hands them that check and they're in the middle of devastation. They've lost everything. I saw one member. I got up to, he's in Beaumont, and it was day 12 and the water just receded. He had 9 pictures of his 9-year-old daughter on the hood of his car trying to dry him out, and a pair of roller skates, and that's all he had left. He didn't have anything left. So the emotions that went through him, which transcended to me and everybody else was there, was really, quite frankly, overwhelming. But it's such a great joy to be able to help and assist with supplies and materials, and then dispatch a group of members to go out there and start ripping out the drywall and the cabinets so they can start drying their home out, because they're displaced hours away because everybody's been affected. So those types of things are really overwhelming, but really is a great feeling as an organization, and with great pride that I've been able to go to those devastated areas.
So you talk about members mobilizing, and we've gotten a few questions in from locals already, and they say they're hearing a lot about what you're calling Smart Army.
Yeah.
What is the Smart Army?
So Smart Army is engaging our members for their local, engaging our members for their general committee, engaging our members for our legislative or other initiatives that are part of that local union or that legislative body or that general committee. Bringing members together for their own economic interests. We talk about collective bargaining, right? It's collective interest. It's not just every 3 years or every 5 years. It's a year-long, day in, day out, month in, month out event that we can and should be doing for our brothers and sisters. We call each other brother and sister, and making our community better. We are the fabric, or part of the fabric of our communities, and making sure that our members, they're the baseball coaches, they're the football coaches, they sit and they work throughout their community. But when it comes to the economic interests of our members and going and trying to sit down with the city council or some local governance board for a project labor agreement or a responsible contracting policy or whatever the case may be, that's the consensus with Joe Sellers being there, that is the football coach or the wrestling coach, or maybe he's just the timekeeper, but he's part of that community, and he adds value, and that value includes the economic interests of that member and that working family, wife, spouses, children, right? To be able to live in that community and to be able to afford the things that community wants and needs. So those are some of the things. And as we build that local power, as we continue to build that local power and make it bigger with the Smart Army, then Smart International becomes stronger. And it goes back to that 200,000. It's corralling that 200,000 voices, because when your voice is louder and your voice is louder and your voice is louder, then our voice is louder. And we as Smart are now 200,000 stronger. We can do great things. We have smartaction.org that we want our members to go to be part of that Smart Army. Or we can smart text to 90975 and start engaging in the actions that their local needs from its membership, to make sure that we're doing better, we're growing, and we're capturing those jobs that we need to for our members, for our families, to do a better job tomorrow than what we did yesterday.
So it sounds like one of the things you're asking your members to do is to take the power in their own hands. And if they go to the website that you maybe we can bring up the website and the texting. If they go to the website and they text, what kind of information do they go into a special network and you get them a lot more information to do the kinds of things you're talking about?
Yeah, let me just give you maybe one good example, right? So it wasn't that long ago in Seattle well, come out of the state of Washington, I heard of a right to work initiative. So first thing I think of, how's that happen? How does that happen in Washington, the state of Washington? How does that happen? Then the next thing I hear is that this vote takes place just 24 hours later. So the Smart Army Transportation Division, sheet metal workers, they send out this blast. 415 members within 24 hours show up. That's a flash mob. That flash mob mentality went to the Capitol that day, 24 hours later after notice, and they beat down right to work. That's the mentality of the Smart Army. The mentality of doing that, or maybe it's the mentality of going out and helping a brother or sister out that may have been flooded or lost their house during fire, and maybe bring them in to their home or help them move to a hotel, or whatever the case may be. But that flash mob mentality and that action by all members pushing the issue together and speaking with one voice, within that period of time, within a 24-hour period of time, they had a great result. They beat down right to work legislation, and they moved on to the next issue. So that's a really good example.
Well, it shows the power of what a labor union is. It's why the labor unions were, created to begin with, was to create power. And this sounds like the Smart Army is a great example of that. You mentioned right to work. Mm-hmm. So we have a question that just came in from Tom Wilson in local 1440. He asked about the Janus case, which is at the Supreme Court on the horizon, and what does this Janus case mean to right to work if the Supreme Court were to rule against labor unions?
So that's a good question. So Janus is a version of right to work for public sector employees. So last year, it was in California. It was a Fredericks case. Right? So last year, they bring virtually the same question to the Supreme Court, and it was on Fredericks, and it was on right to work for California teachers. Now there again, you talk about the state of Washington. Now you're talking about the state of California, right? So now they're looking at that issue. So what happens is that issue, there's only 8 Supreme Court justices, and they deadlock. They deadlock at 4-4. So then it goes down to a lower court, and the issue goes away. Now they bring it back up again. So now they got Janus out there, and that now is right to work for public employees. And if in fact the Supreme Court passes that legislation, then it will be continual, and it will be across states across the country, and that issue will continue to be a problem in the construction industry, and the production industry. We've been dealing with that for many years. As a matter of fact, I think the number is like 26 states. 26 states have right to work issues on it already. As a matter of fact, earlier this year, Senator Flake, who we hear in the news just recently, stood on the floor for a while, but Senator Flake pushed a right to work national issue on the floor for not only construction but national right to work, but included our rail, our transportation division. So it included rail and rail members. So those are the things, and really what we need to do, we need to get ahead of that. We need to be ahead of that. We need to fight off those attacks, maybe with the flash mob mentality, or maybe with the Smart Army or Smart Action, and move on like that. But those are the initiatives, and this decision that the Supreme Court came up with, or decided on, or will decide on, there's got to be a reason why they deadlocked last year, and there's got to be a reason why now Gorsuch has been approved, right? So now he's the new Supreme Court. So now there's 9. There isn't a deadlock, right? So, you kind of read the tea leaves of where that may go, and why would they want to hear it? Because they decide what they want to hear, and they just went through the exercise last year.
So for those that are unfamiliar with what really fully happened, the court listened to a case last year on right to work for public employees, and then Anthony Scalia passed away.
That's correct.
And
yes.
So
yep. And that's how it deadlocked.
The 4-4, and now
yep.
President Trump has put a new justice in, and it's going to go 5-4 one way or the other.
Right. Yep.
And what I hear you saying is, if they believed in the old ruling, they wouldn't have looked at the case again.
Right. Yep.
And it's kind of interesting. I was reading about Mark Janus, the guy who was bringing the case in, and he loves his union contract. He just doesn't want to pay dues. for his union contract.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. So how do you belong? How do you belong to an organization? How do you belong to something as simple as maybe to a fitness center, right? And walk in and use the fitness when everybody around you is paying, or maybe half of you are just paying for the fitness center. So how do you have a due structure with is very important issues: wages, benefits, conditions, representation, grievances, without everybody being part of the bargaining unit and part of the collective bargaining agreement through their local union. So those are very important issues.
Yeah, it's funny because he's not saying I don't want my contract and all the benefits I get from it. I just don't want to pay my dues.
Right.
Another question coming in from other locals saying it looks like Congress is looking at the Employee Rights Act, which is a national version of right to work, very similar to the laws passed in Wisconsin. And the question from a few of your locals is, what are you doing to make our locals stronger and our membership understand the need to stick together?
So we want to make sure that we're sharing the smart army, right? So we'll probably go back to that a lot. There's on the West Coast, there's a campaign for jobs. Came out of California, came out of San Francisco, the local 104, very large local. They've shared that. So it's about getting that message out to our locals, making sure that we're displaying our value to of the membership, to our communities, to our elected officials. We got to make sure that they understand the issues that are affecting us, making sure that we're educating those elected officials on these issues. It's not just expect them to understand what the prevailing wage is, right? We would be very surprised maybe members are very surprised to hear that people believe that let's say a Chicago prevailing wage applies to Florida. Well, that's not the case. It's an area survey that's done. So the education process. So somebody that's sitting in the House or the Senate or the White House, sitting there thinking that how do you take a Chicago rate down to maybe Florida or maybe Texas or Oklahoma or something like that? But that's not the case. So it's part of an education process of how we, with our members, because our members are constituents. So those congressmen and women and those senators that are sitting there and they're voting, we need to make sure that we educate them and that their constituents, John Doe member, is sending them a letter or educating them, right to work is not for me. This is not a right to work state. Or I do support Davis-Bacon, or I do support prevailing wages in my state. And we expect as your constituents to reflect that in your voting record. And that education process is a grassroots campaign. And it takes time and it takes effort. It takes coordination with our locals and nationally. But it can't just be done at the Capitol. It's got to be done at a grassroots level, at the local level.
So we got another question, and we're talking politics and congressional topics, and one of the hot topics is about politics. And Bob Crosley from Philadelphia writes, this past election showed us a deep divide in our members' opinions on supporting our union candidates. What's being done at our international to kind of solidify our vote and make sure that we all are on the same page, whether it's for president or congressional candidates, on the issues that are important, like right to work or prevailing wage?
I know Bob. That's my home local, and I appreciate that question. But I think that we stand with those that stand with us, and that's been a long tradition, right? Now, over the years, I think that it has shifted. We're predominantly a Democratic, favoring organization, but I also will say that we need to make sure that it's not. It's who stands with us. It's for those who has our core values, for those that represent our pocketbook issues and our member pocketbook issues. It's those that support the right to collectively bargain. There are many forces working against labor unions today. They do not support collective bargaining. And those are the things that we're up against. So, it's about making sure that we have that collective action out there. As a matter of fact, there were 58 Republicans just this year alone that helped support a piece of legislation that was voted down for Davis-Bacon and prevailing wage. So that helped to maintain Davis-Bacon and prevailing wages. So that just doesn't happen over a period of time. So while it probably looks like it's a Democratic support, maybe just Democratic support, certainly it's a long-standing process, and it just doesn't happen because we flipped the switch this year. 58 Republicans stands for our values, and we support those because they have those core issues that are very important to us. They understand collective bargaining. They understand the right for collective bargaining, and they understand that we should have a fair wage, that we should have benefits, and we should have the opportunity to retire with the dignity of being a member. I mean, you look at Wisconsin, right? So we heard a lot about Wisconsin, and we had the sit-in at the Capitol, and it seems like it's now years ago, but that first attack was on public sector unions, right? It didn't take 2 years before it was every union, right? So it was only a 2-year period. So there's a whole education process that we need to go through, and I'll give you another example. My home state of Pennsylvania. Right, so it wasn't. It's not right now, but it wasn't that long ago. At the last election, they held all 3 branches of government. They held the governor, they held the Senate, and they held the House. Right. So when a prevailing wage issue would come up, when a right to work issue would come up, it's because of the relationships in the state of Pennsylvania that labor organizations had, long-standing relationships, and the support that they provided. That would not let that bill surface, or if it did surface, that it got voted down. So it's because of the relationships that have been built over the years with Republicans and Democrats that those things, the 58 vote at a national level, and the House and the Senate, it doesn't even get to the governor to approve or veto. I think it's important for our members to look at running for office. I come from Philadelphia area, but New Jersey, our neighboring state, they do an outstanding job at members running for office. So there's over 1,000 elected officials throughout the state at every level of state office that are union members. And it means a big deal when Senator Sweeney is the Senate president and he shares labor values with all the other senates. Right, and when Joe Egan, who's an IBEW member, shares that with the assembly, and then it trickles down to each local office that other members, including our members, but other members are in there educating their colleagues on what these issues are and what these issues mean.
Let me get to one more political question because I know time is moving pretty quick here. And I just want to remind everyone in the audience, if you keep sending questions in, even if they're not answered during the program, someone will surely get back to you with an answer to your question after the program is over. We're going to answer every question that comes in. So feel free to send questions in during the rest of the show and even over the course of the next few days. This whole idea, Michael Leach out of Local 20 in Fort Wayne, he reemphasizes this idea that you're a Democratic organization, that your PAL funds go to Democratic candidates only, and he's seen some slight movement to Republicans, but he's asking the question, shouldn't we be bipartisan? Didn't you just spend some time with President Trump, and haven't you been meeting with his cabinet a little more regularly than you might have with some of the past presidents out there?
Yeah. Actually, I don't know as an organization that we've been invited to the Oval Office. So at the beginning of the year, frankly, on the first full day of the presidency, he invited myself, Sean McGarvey, the president of the Building Trades, and 3 other general presidents, as well as other rank and file members, to come to the Roosevelt Room and go to the White House. I've also been invited to meet with Secretary Acosta of the Department of Labor. I've also met with Ways and Means Chairman Brady. I've been invited to meet with Paul Ryan and so those types of things. So that's because of SMART. That's not because of Joe Sellers, and that's because of the activity that SMART has. That's because of a bipartisan relationship that we're in on those types of meetings. And my opinion is, some people say, well, why would you go to that? Why would you be appointed to the apprenticeship task force, right? So which just happened 2 weeks ago. Because I believe that when an administration or a secretary or a chairman or a chairwoman asks for our opinion, we're going to give our opinion. We're going to sit in those meetings and we're going to voice our opinion of what that piece means, whether it's healthcare for HHS or whether it's Department of Labor and 1099 employees. What's happening to them? What does that mean to our contractors? What does that mean to our members? And we're going to voice our opinion. It in some cases maybe it won't be heard, but it's not because it's not a lack of action. If I have an opportunity, we're going to sit, we're going to meet, we're going to talk, we're going to figure out how we can add our voice to the conversation. We're going to sit at the table, we're going to roll up our sleeves, and not only sit at that table, but we're going to work on task force if we're invited to do so, and share what that means for a working man or woman on that particular issue, whether it has to do with healthcare, whether it has to do with a Department of Labor issue, whether it has to do with a 1099 employee that is actually functioning as a contractor, just not paying the tax base of a contractor. And those are the things that we're going to continue to do.
So our time is going, so I'm going to jump around. Rich Nito, Local 28, says, please give me an update on the pension fund status.
Okay. This is the National Pension Fund. So if you go on to smwnpf.org, there's an awful lot of information on there. I get a lot of feedback from members and other people that go on there because we do offer a lot of information. I'll give you like the cliff note of the assets and the hours that are coming in. So as far as that. The net assets as of 12/31/2016 of the National Pension Fund is $4.33 billion. Now that's up from last year, which was $3.99 billion. So it's up, considerably, $400 million. So that's where the assets are up. The other good thing that happened in 2006, we had a positive cash flow. So for the first time since 1988. So since 1988. The pension benefits that are paid out, we had more assets coming in for investments and the other administrative costs that offset the pensions that are being paid out. So we had a positive cash flow. Our assumption rate is 7.5%, which that bogey we think is going to be pretty tough. We think it's going to be pretty tough over the next few years. You have rising interest rates environment, right? So we keep hearing that it's going to go up 0.25%. That may happen 1 or may happen 2. So that hurts your bond portfolio. So we think that 7.5% over the next few years is going to be difficult. But we're also seeing that hours are up. So in the first 8 months of this year, hours are up 2.34%. And that's a little bit down from last year, which is compared to the year before that, which was 3.75%. So the industry is certainly, the hours are coming in, they're getting better. When you compare 15 to 14, the increase was 5.3%. So you would think that the hours would be a little bit higher, and it feels good because we're not, the underemployment and the unemployment has gotten better in most areas across the country, and it has gotten better. So those are some of the things. Now in January 1 of 2014, we took the V-bar. We implemented the V-bar, which is the variable benefit accrual rate. So when we went through that, we were in the red zone, and then January 1, when we implemented that, we went into the yellow zone. And the actuary certified that we are still in the yellow zone today. In fact, our funding percentage went up 1.2%, so it's at 60.6%. So it's in the green zone, and the funding improvement plan is still in process and working through. So as we look at the V-bar, the variable accrual rate, that's done over a 3-year period. So that 3-year period looks like, and it's as certified by the actuary. So that three-year rate starts at 2014. So it's 2014. Our rate of return as certified, our rate of return from the market and all that was at 6.12%. As I said a little earlier, our assumption rate is 7.5%. 2015, the year after that, it was a negative number. It was a bad investment year. We were down 0.42%, right? The following year, 2016, we were at 8.8%. So the V-bar structure is once that's certified, those numbers are certified by the actuary, it says what's the average of that, which is 4.59%. Now what that means is our accrual rate, January 1, 2018, will be at a 0.5% accrual. This year right now, we're at 1% accrual. So it's going to be a decrease in an accrual for the year of 2018, and then that is a rolling 3 years and calculated every time by the actuary for the prior year. So we want to make sure that we give our members the accrual rate that they're going to be earning from the day. And I know that they have a chart that we're going to be showing here, but you can see in that chart how the plan.
Why don't we pull the chart up if we can?
Yep.
Okay.
So you can see as the plan goes, this is the chart. So you don't see the red because that was in 2013, but you see where we're at, and if you look at the bottom bars on that, it's just over 60%. So that 60%, you can see how the bars slowly graduate up into the green zone. So this is the funding improvement plan, and the funding improvement plan still is good and still is certified, and we're gonna see slow progress through there. As I said, the interest rates we think are going to be a little lower than 7.5 because of the rising interest rates. But that's only one leg of the stool. We got to make sure we're capturing hours. I said that hours were up, right? They're up over the last 3 years, but may not be as up as we would think because of the amount of work that we have right now. So it's vitally important that we make sure that we grow our hours, we put our people to work, we make sure that they're working and they're contributing to all of their funds and certainly putting a roof over their head and putting food on the table.
So a lot of numbers there.
Yeah.
And for the average guy who is sitting there going, is my pension going to be there? I mean, when I look at the chart, it looks like you've kind of made the right trajectory. You've made the necessary changes. Mm-hmm. I mean, people should feel pretty good with where you're going.
Right. Yeah. So I would say that over the 5-year period, which is 2014 through 2018, the average has been 0.95. So that's been the average accrual rate. That will be the average accrual rate over that period of time. Right. So yes, it's lower now, but there was just a couple of years ago it was 1.25. And then the year before that, it was 1.25. But so the average is down. The plan is heading in the right direction. We need to see market return. We need to see contribution coming in. As a matter of fact, one of the things that the trustees did is there's no increase to the contribution rate for all of 2018 and all of 2019. So that's a positive action that hasn't happened for many years. There's been a long increase every year to the pension fund contribution, but unless there's a catastrophic event, there's no additional contributions needed for 18 and 19. So that's a good thing. And you know what? There's a case to be made that there could be pension fatigue out there when it comes to all these numbers and pulling up the website and looking at all these reports. But as you can see here, I thought that this chart would show that it's a upward climb until you get to the green zone, and then continues to move on throughout that chart.
All right, another question that came in. We're in Local 10, and we're in a battle with the carpenters over architectural metals, and recently found out that they're training their members and giving certification in building envelope enclosures. I understand this is an industry-wide problem around the country. How can we, SMART, help our membership gain these certifications? Local 10 did close to 500,000 hours in architectural last year. So
we see architectural work increasing. Our projections view that as architectural work will increase between 26 and 40%, right? So what we're doing is we're breaking down our training programs, and we need to make sure that our locals are identifying those architectural projects and indicating what the mobilization schedules needed on those projects. You have one job here that's going to need 20 sheet metal workers on architectural work, while you have 2 or 3 maybe other jobs needing 60 architectural workers, right? So what we're doing is we're breaking that down. We're trying to get the locals to review their mobilization schedule, what the requirements will be. We just hired an architectural specialist. He works for the ITI. He's a sheet metal worker, comes out of the architectural industry, superintendent, vice president. Dan McCallum has industry knowledge and working with contractors and going to go in to these different areas and provide this type of training in modules so that when you hit the ground and you hit the job, you'll be able to start up. But then there's going to be ongoing education that's going to be needed, and they're going to work on those modules right now. So that architectural industry is going to continue to grow, and we want to make sure we're keeping pace. But the other thing that we need to keep an eye on is making sure that in these sectors that we think are going to be busy, another area is going to be industrial, right? We're going to need a lot of architectural members in industrial as well as laggers in industrial. So we got to make sure that we set up the same training programs and the same certifications that are happening, whether it's a wind load certification or whether it's the different certifications that go on with the different structures and the different panel systems. They're all done in panel systems now, and working with the building scanners that are becoming more and more prevalent. That technology has changed, and that technology will continue to advance at a rapid pace. We need to make sure that our members are able to operate and break those drawings down and break down how those attachment points to the side of the building are being done. Very similar to what we see when it comes to GPS positioning. That happens on the side of a building as well in a straight sheet metal HVAC. That's done every day when it comes to hanger supports, but it's also done on the face of an architectural building.
A couple quick questions before we wrap this up. How are SMART members impacted by the lack of changes in Obamacare by Congress? Should people be worried?
As a union member, we have good benefits. So we have good health care. So as a union member, our worry about that is less than others. It's a very complex system. Healthcare is very complex. We're very concerned with the cost of healthcare. Trend rates are at double digits. They've been in double digits. You can't negotiate or anticipate where those costs are going to go. So as they continue to increase, we want to make sure we're controlling that. So the Obamacare issue doesn't necessarily hurt because we have a union collective bargaining agreement, and that provides for health care, right? So our members will have health care. But the other thing about that is, the people that I talk to, friends and family, right? I have family members that their stress levels through the roof. They're through the roof because of repeal, right? And they have a hard time sleeping at night because they won't have health care. So those types of things impact us, but our union makes sure, and our union officials and our local unions, and maybe it's a national contract, they have health care, and they have good health care. We're always working on good, affordable, the most cost-effective program that we have out there on a very complex plan. And our locals and our international works on those issues every day. So when there's a problem, when there's trouble, there's somebody to talk to or talk them through that. The other thing that really bothers me is, we talk about, I never talk about, but I hear the word implosion. We're going to let it implode. Well, on the other side of that issue are hardworking men and women of this country. Implosion to them is disaster. Implosion means they're imploding. And I take offense to that. And we're going to continue to work hard. We're going to continue to make sure that we provide the best health care that we can, cost-effective health care to our members and their families. And we're going to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to educate them and help them through their critical issues, whether it has to do with them and in many cases our retirees that are up in years. And you have now a generation trying to take care of an older generation and try to work their way through the Medicare system. And what does all that mean?
All right, we have over 200 questions. We are running out of time. People are definitely on target. A couple quick things. A couple folks from your rail locals are asking, I hear there's a new tentative agreement. Can you provide some details?
So, yes, there is a new tentative agreement. President Prepasich from the Transportation Division was on a negotiating committee with that coalition of unions that was negotiating with the carriers. and this is for Transportation Division. So Transportation Division Vice Presidents and General Chairman will be meeting with members to respond to their questions, and at the conclusion of that, there will be a ballot that will be circulated so that our members can vote to ratify the agreement. And it's important that your voice is heard. It's important that your voice is heard on your contract. Now, there are other coalitions that do not have a tentative agreement yet. So, such as the coalition that the sheet metal rail members are in. So there's not a tentative agreement that, and I know they continue to negotiate, but the Smart Transportation Division does have a tentative agreement, and all those meetings will be taking place very shortly, and then there will be a ratification ballot that will be circulated for members to vote vote on the contract.
All right, we're going to ask you the last question. I want to remind folks out watching, keep sending your questions in. People will answer your questions. We'll try to come back and do this again. But as you are out there talking with folks, as your members are sitting here watching, what do you want them to do? How can they make a difference? What are the things you need them to do to make this union stronger?
Participate. Be part of their union. Be part of the action alerts. Be part of using the app. Right? We have an app that you can download, and these action alerts will help the different generations of smart members, from the millennials to the baby boomers to the retiree, about what's important and what needs to be done in that local, in that city, in that community. Be part of that smart army. Be part of that campaign for jobs, if that's what we're calling it. Be part of that. Get involved. Stand with your leaders. Pull on the rope with them. Pull on the rope on that issue that's important. That right to work issue in the state of Washington. We all got to pull on the rope. And it may be a sheet metal issue today, but as Senator Flake has presented, it's going to be a global issue tomorrow. So pull on the rope together. Stay engaged. We are approachable. We want to hear. When I go to job sites and I talk to members and I sit and I discuss with a group, I really want to hear, and I want you to approach me. Now, sometimes when we get an answer, and you said it earlier, we're going to get back to you. It's not always from Joe Sellers. We have different levels of the organization, so maybe it comes with some. I picked up the phone and called people because they had questions. They submitted questions, so I picked up the phone and gave them a call and gave them an answer. Sometimes it's the international rep. Sometimes it's General Secretary Treasurer McLeese. Sometimes it's an international rep or an international organizer. So it's going to come at the variety of levels that we have in this in our organization, but we also want to make sure that we're listening. We also want to make sure that we're getting back to and talking to our members and what is affecting them at the workplace. What is the job conditions? What is the technological changes? And how do we embrace that as a union? And how do we make sure that we're training to it? Just like you said with the wind load certification or the architectural certifications for the different panel systems that are out there. How are we making sure that we're keeping up with the technological changes? And lastly, we need to stand up for our brothers and sisters. We need to make sure that we're standing up, and we're that brother or we're that sister that's going to stand up for somebody, whether it's harassment or whether it's a parity of wages or whatever the issue is. We're going to stand up as a union. We're going to speak with one voice. We're going to pull on the rope with our leadership, and we're going to stand up for the person right next to us, side by side with them, on the issues that are important to them, and make sure that we're protecting each other.
Thanks. Great answer. Thanks, everyone, for watching the show here. Remember, your questions will be answered. Keep sending them in, and stay tuned. Go to the website, go to Facebook, follow the union on Twitter. Do what you can to stay informed. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.